My name is Dr. David Rosenberg, and I have spent 37 years as a trauma surgeon. That means I have spent my career patching people back together after they have come apart in ways that most surgeons will never encounter. Car accidents, falls, stabbings, gunshots, overdoses, explosions, diving accidents, motorcycle collisions at high speed, compound fractures, internal hemorrhage, traumatic brain injury. Every kind of human damage you can imagine, I have tried to repair. I have saved thousands of lives. I have stood in operating rooms at 2 in the morning and made decisions that determined whether people lived or died. I have lost hundreds. I have the kind of mind that compartmentalizes, that files away the ones I could not save, and moves on to the next patient. That is how you survive 37 years of that work. I became a machine, and I was very good at being a machine. I was excellent at it. I was remarkable at it. I was the best trauma surgeon in my hospital for 17 consecutive years. I was a man who believed in the body and the body alone. I understood the body in ways that few people ever developed the capacity to understand anything. I could feel the fragile vessels in the human neck and know exactly how much pressure to apply without killing someone, without hitting the carotid or the jugular, the precise anatomy of survival. I could look at an X-ray and see the story written in broken bones, could read trauma like language, could predict what I would find when I opened someone up based on the geometry of their injuries. I could feel the difference between healthy tissue and damaged tissue just by touch, could assess viability in a fraction of a second. The body was a machine, and I was very good at fixing machines. The soul, the spirit, the metaphysical side of being human, the ineffable thing that made a person rather than just an organism, that was for priests and philosophers and people who could afford to be uncertain about outcomes. I was a mechanic. I was a repair person. I was not interested in questions that could not be answered with anatomy and physiology. I was not interested in mysteries. I was not interested in the unknowable. I was interested in outcomes. I was interested in whether the patient survived the night. I was interested in whether they woke up from the anesthesia. I was interested in whether they walked again, or talked again, or functioned again. I was interested in moving on to the next case and the one after that, the next problem to solve, the next body that needed fixing. I was in my kitchen in Denver, Colorado on a Sunday morning in March of 2016 when I had an anaphylactic reaction to a bee sting I had not noticed. I know this sounds absurd. A trauma surgeon killed by a bee in his own kitchen. The absurdity was not lost on me even during the event. The universe sometimes has a sense of dark humor, irony that is almost literary in its precision. I had been having my morning coffee, the same coffee I had been having every Sunday morning for 11 years, ever since my wife had left and I had learned to exist in solitude. I had been thinking about the patients I had lost that week. The ones I could not save despite everything I knew, everything I had trained for, everything my hands had learned to do. I had been replaying surgical decisions, wondering if I had cut wrong or if the bleeding had been unstoppable, the kind of rumination that had become my Sunday morning ritual. I had my EpiPen in my bag in the other room, and by the time I understood what was happening, I could not get to it. My airway was closing. The swelling was rapid and complete. I was on the floor of my own kitchen, next to the coffee maker, dying the way I had watched others die, alone and without the apparatus of a trauma bay to intervene. I was a trauma surgeon. I understood precisely what was happening to my body. I could monitor my own deterioration the way I monitored patients, could feel the cascade of histamine, could understand the mechanism of anaphylaxis, could feel the specific sensation of the airway closing from the inside. That knowledge did not help. I could not intubate myself. I could not perform the tracheotomy that might have saved my life. I went down next to the kitchen table, the same table where I had eaten breakfast alone for 11 years since my wife left, the same table where my daughter sat across from me when she visited twice a year and was careful not to talk about certain things, careful not to ask me why I had let the marriage fail, careful not to suggest that my work had consumed everything else. The same table where I had reviewed medical journals and drunk cold coffee while thinking about the patients I had lost, running diagnostic patterns in my head, practicing sutures on imagination, unable to stop even on my day off. I could feel consciousness leaving the way I had watched it leave patients, that particular gradual dimming, that quality of awareness receding like a tide going out, like a light that was being slowly switched off. I could feel the panic being replaced by a kind of clarity that happens only when the body knows it is running out of time. There is a window of awareness that opens when you are dying, a moment when all pretense falls away, and all the games you have been playing with yourself become visible for what they are. I could feel the silence beginning, the way the world becomes very quiet when you are at the threshold between one thing and another. And then I was not on the kitchen floor anymore. I was in my mother's kitchen. Not the kitchen as it is now. She sold that house in 1998. The kitchen as it was when I was 7 years old, in Bethesda, Maryland, with the yellow curtains and the smell of the soup she made on Sundays, and the particular sound of her moving around the room, that particular rhythm of her presence, the way she hummed while she worked, the way she knew I was there without looking. My mother has been dead for 20 years. She passed on a winter evening with my hand in hers and my heart closed off against the feeling. She was standing at the stove. The light was coming through the window exactly the way I remembered it, that particular slant of afternoon light that fell on the counter. The shadows were in the exact same places. Everything was exactly as it had been in 1967, down to the small chip in the rim of the pot, the exact shade of the lemon yellow of the curtains, the worn spot on the linoleum where she always stood. The soup was simmering. I could smell it. I could smell the carrots and celery and the chicken stock that had been cooking since morning. She turned around, and she looked at me the way she looked at me when I was 7 and had done something I was proud of. Not proud of herself proud of me. That specific expression I had not seen since I was a child and had been chasing, without knowing I was chasing it, for the entire 40 years since. I had been chasing it in every surgical success, in every patient I saved, in every outcome that proved I was good at what I did. She smiled. It was her smile. It was exactly her. It was the version of her that had always been there, underneath everything else. The version that had loved me before I earned it, and would love me after I stopped deserving it. Before I became a surgeon, before I became excellent, before I became so focused on outcomes that I forgot about the people. She knew who I was, all of me, not the surgeon, the boy. She did not say much. Words were not necessary. She sat down across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we had sat when I was 7, where she had taught me that the world was bigger and stranger and more full of possibility than the visible part of it. Where she had taught me that what we could see was only part of the story, and she showed me, in a way I cannot fully explain, the things I needed to understand before I went back. She showed me that the people I had lost in surgery were not gone, not in the way I had believed they were gone. They had not vanished into the void of failure. They had not been erased by my inability to save them. They had completed something I could not see from the operating table, something that was not failure but transition, not ending but transformation. She showed me the completions I had not been able to see, the resolutions that happened in the space between the last vital sign and whatever came next. She showed me that when I had done everything I could and a patient died anyway, that was not a failure of my mechanics. It was a completion of something I could not see from where I was standing. It was not my failure. It was their release. It was them stepping out of the machine the way I had stepped out of my body on the kitchen floor, leaving behind the broken vessel and moving into something I had been so focused on repairing that I never understood what I was trying to preserve. And she showed me something I have carried for 8 years since. She showed me that the conversations I had been too busy to have with my daughter, the things I had postponed because there would always be more time, those conversations were still possible. I had not run out of time yet, but I had less than I thought. I was not immortal. I was not the machine I had believed myself to be, capable of going on indefinitely. She showed me the weight of the years I had not called her. She showed me the weight of the distance I had maintained, the way it had accumulated like scar tissue in the space between us. She showed me the visits where I had been present but absent, my mind still in the operating room, still processing the patients I had lost. She showed me the holidays where I had focused on my schedule rather than her voice. She showed me that it was not too late to change it, but she also showed me that it was never not too late, that every moment I did not act was a moment I was choosing against her. The time I had left was not infinite. The time I had left was finite and precious and running. I came back in the ambulance. My neighbor had heard me fall and called 911. The paramedic said my airway had been nearly fully closed when they arrived. She said she did not know how I was still alive. She said I should have been dead. She was correct. I told her I had been somewhere. I told her I understood what had just happened to me. I spent 3 months not operating. I could not go into a trauma bay without feeling her presence, without feeling the weight of what she had shown me, without understanding that the person on the table was not a body to be fixed, but a consciousness preparing to let go or to stay. I spent those 3 months calling my daughter every week, not twice a year. I called and I listened to her voice and I told her I loved her, which I had never said in the previous 40 years of our relationship. I went to Bethesda and stood in front of the house where I had grown up, and felt exactly nothing complicated, which felt like a different kind of arrival. I felt like I understood something I had needed to understand for a very long time. I stood there for a long time. I stood there and I could feel her presence and I could smell the soup. I went back to surgery. I am still a mechanic. I still fix broken bodies. I still operate for the same number of hours, follow the same protocols, apply the same technical expertise I have developed over 37 years. But I am a mechanic who now understands that the machine is not the person. When I am in a trauma bay and a patient is bleeding out, and I am doing what I was trained to do, I know something I did not know before. The person is still there regardless of what the machine does. The person was never only the machine. I understand this now in a way I could not have understood it before. I can see the moment when someone is dying, and I know that the dying is not the end of them. It is the release of them. It is the person stepping out of the body the way I stepped out of the kitchen on my neighbor's call. I have changed the way I talk to families now. Instead of focusing on the technical outcome, instead of reducing the situation to percentages and recovery probabilities, I sit with them and I say, your loved one is still themselves. They are still here, and they are preparing for something. And I tell them it is okay to let go. I tell them that I have seen what comes next, and it is not darkness. It is not void. It is their mother or their father or their child welcoming them home. The kitchen table is real. The conversations you have been postponing are still possible. The person you have been missing is fine, and they are proud of you in exactly the way you have always needed them to be. The yellow curtains were real. The soup was real. The love was real, and it still is. It does not disappear when the body dies. It becomes clearer. It becomes the foundation that everything is built on. And they are waiting for you in a kitchen that will never change, in a place where time moves differently, where love is the only thing that is measured. I put together a short guide about the kind of completions I have witnessed in 37 years at the edge of life and death, and what my own experience on my kitchen floor confirmed about what is waiting on the other side of the last breath. What I have learned about the moment when the person releases the machine and steps into whatever comes next. The link is below this video. Because the yellow curtains were real, and so was everything that happened at that kitchen table.